Okay, we are continuing in our series of the book of Daniel, living in a Jew in a foreign land, living as a Jew in a foreign land. And this is our fourth session. We already discussed a couple of different points leading us into chapter 2 of the book of Daniel. We had an introduction. We read Perek Aleph, which was about maintaining Jewish identity. And last week, we read through chapter 2, which was the dream that Nebuchanezzar has, and the fact that Daniel is able to interpret it. And we spent a great deal of time comparing Daniel to Yosef because the comparisons are strong and obvious. So we spent a lot of time talking about that. And I think that was significant and good to spend that time on that. What we didn't spend a lot of time on was actually looking at the dream itself and what it means and what are we supposed to make of this dream. And that's really what I'd like to focus on today. I'm a little bit under the weather, so I may be a little bit shorter than I usually am, but let's see what we can do. So we're in the book of Daniel, and actually I'm going to start reviewing the piece that we already read, which was where Daniel now goes and explains Nebuchadnezzar to him what the dream was. So here you go. He says like this, I'm reading from, if you have a Daniel with you, it's chapter 2, verse 27. And here we go, chapter 2, verse 27. So it says, Daniel answered the king, and he said, that which the king has inquired, wise men, exorcists, magicians, and diviners cannot tell to the king. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. And as he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar, there is a God who in heaven who reveals mysteries. And he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what is to be at the end of days. This is your dream and the vision that entered your mind in bed. O king, the thoughts that came to your mind in your bed are about future events. He who reveals mysteries, meaning Hashem, has let you know what is to happen. Not because my wisdom is greater than that of other creatures has this mystery been revealed to me, but in order that the meaning should be made known to the king and that you may know the thoughts of your mind. Okay, so the king is, Daniel is talking to the king and he's saying, listen, the dream that you have is from Hashem and I'm going to interpret it for you, but the only reason I'm able to interpret it for you is because the king told me, because Hashem, the ultimate king, told me. And why is he telling me? So that you should know what he wants to do, right? You're basically seeing the vision of the future. Now, remember, when Daniel is telling over this dream, the king never told him what the dream was. So Daniel had to tell the king what happened in the dream and then the interpretation of the dream. So that's what we have happen. So he says, O king, as you looked on, there appeared a great statue, right? And that's what we're basically I'm gonna just throw on the screen right now, is kind of an image of the dream that Daniel describes. So you see a great statue. This statue, which was huge and its brightness surpassing, stood before you, and its appearance was awesome. The head of that statue was of fine gold, right? So there's a statue in the dream, and the head of the statue has fine gold. Its breasts and arms were of silver, right? So it has silver arms, right? Its belly and thighs of bronze, right? And its legs were of iron, right? Pardon my lack of artistic ability here, but really this is just the symbolism of the dream, right? So again, the king, Nebuchadnezzar, in his dream is seeing some version of this. We don't know exactly what, but he's seeing some kind of statue. The statue resembles a human being, because it has all the different parts of the human being, but the different parts of the human being are created of different metals, right? Gold, silver, bronze, and then iron, right? And obviously you notice the descending value of each item, right? Gold on the top is the highest value, silver next, bronze next, iron next, right? But based on its rarity and therefore its value. Okay, so he says, as you looked on, so this is what he sees. Its legs were of iron and its feet part iron and part clay. I actually didn't put that on here, right? But basically the feet were made up of a mixture of iron and clay. Okay, as you looked on, a stone was hewn out, not by hands, right? So there's a stone that comes into the picture, right? And the stone struck the statue on its own on its feet of iron and clay and crushed them. All at once, the iron, clay, bronze, silver, and gold were crushed and became like chaff of the threshing floor of summer. A wind carried them off until there was none of them left. Right? Basically, the rock comes, the stone comes, and wipes everything else out. But the stone that remains, that struck the statue, became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Right? So that's the image. Again, you have the statue, the stone strikes the statue, and the statue completely turns, it's pulverized, it's completely wiped out, it's gone. Right? That's the dream that the king sees. Now, the king has no idea what that dream means. And the king didn't even didn't relay that dream to Daniel or to anybody else, either because he forgot or he didn't want to tell anyone, because if he tells them, then it's easy for them to interpret and he won't know if they really know the interpretation. By not telling them what the dream was, and then Daniel can tell him what the dream is, so then that shows the validity of Daniel's interpretation. Daniel knows what he's talking about because he doesn't even need to be told what the dream is in order to tell what its meaning is, which is pretty impressive. And again, as we said, that's different than the way Yosef describes it, or what happens with Yosef, because Yosef at least had some version of the dream, cows and stalks and so on. Here, Daniel does not. Now Daniel is going to interpret the dream, right? So how does he interpret the dream? So we go back to the statue. He says, "Such was the dream, and we will now tell the king its meaning. You, O king, king of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given kingdom, power, might, and glory, into whose hands he has given men, wild beasts, and the fowl of heaven, wherever they may dwell, and to whom he has given dominion over them. You are the head of gold. You, Nebuchadnezzar, are the head of gold. But another kingdom will arise after you, inferior to yours. Then yet a third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over the whole earth. But the fourth kingdom will be as strong as iron, just as iron crushes and shatters everything, and like iron that smashes, so will it crush and smash all these. You saw the feet and the toes, part potter's clay, part iron, and that means it will be a divided kingdom. It will have only some of the stability of iron, and as much as you saw iron mixed with common clay. And the toes were part iron and part clay. And that means the kingdom will be in part strong and in part brittle. And you saw iron mixed with common clay. That means they shall intermingle with the offspring of men, but shall not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the time of those kings, the God of heaven will establish a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, a kingdom that shall not be transferred to other people. It will crush and wipe out all these kingdoms, but shall itself last forever. Just as you saw how a stone was hewn from the mountain, not by hands, and crushed the iron, bronze, clay, silver, and gold, the great God has made known to the king what will happen in the future. The dream is sure and its interpretation reliable." Okay, so the dream basically says that these four different parts to the statue represent four different kingdoms that are going to come and go. And the big rock that comes represents something that's going to destroy all of them and last for longer, right? So that's the dream for a second. Let me stop here for a moment. What do we make of this dream? Like, what do you get that he's trying to say here, right? What's not being said? So I think that what's happening here is that Hashem was saying to Nebuchadnezzar, listen, here's the story. You're going to be the king. You're very powerful. You're great. You're the head of gold, but you're not going to last forever. And people are going to come after you. And basically, power is going to transfer from one to the other to the next until something entirely different, not metal, but rather some kind of stone is going to come, and it's going to crush everything that's there. It's going to crush everything that's there, the gold, the silver. It's going to completely wipe it out and completely take its place, right? So this is the vision that he has. So what questions do we have about this vision? Like, what do we want to know? What's he really trying to say? What bothers us? Feel free to pipe in. and to unmute yourself. What are some of the questions that we want to ask? Okay, so one question that people definitely like to ask is, well, we identify Nebuchadnezzar as the gold. So the question is, very nice, who's the silver? Who's the bronze? Who's the iron? What's the story with the mixed pottery and iron at the feet? So that's a question. The next question that we ask is, who's the stone, right? Do we know who the stone is? Is the stone Hashem, right? It seems like the stone is Hashem. It seems like that's what he's saying. So question number one is, okay, very nice. You're telling me who some of the symbolism is. Who are the others, right? So that's question number one. Question number two is, when is this happening? Is this something that's happening tomorrow or not? You know, that's a question that we ask. And then the third question that you might want to ask is, hey, wait a second. Daniel is living, let's say around 580, 590 BCE, right? So many years ago. So if he's living that many years ago, right? By now we should be able to figure out, hey, so who are all these people? Especially if it's not expressly given in the Pesukim, maybe now we can tell, oh, this is who it means. Right. And then the next question is, if we can tell, so has the full dream been realized or not? Right. That's the question that we might ask. Okay. So these are all topics that we want to address, and that's what we're going to do right now. Before we do all that, one of the things that I wanted to point out is that when we compare this to Yosef, right? So we can compare something very, very significant. Right? When Yosef, in the Yosef story, Paro has a dream. Why does the Torah tell us that Paro has a dream? Is it so that we see what happens with the Egyptian economy? Are we really interested in what happens to Egypt? Right? Not really. Right? The reason we find out about the story of Paro and his dreams is because it impacts Yosef to take him out of jail, and then eventually impacts Bnei Yisrael to bring them down to Egypt. Right, that's the whole point of us hearing about a dream that Paro has. Otherwise, who could care less about what the dream that Paro has is? Here we have to ask: is that true? Is the dream that we're reading about a dream that's intended for Daniel, for the Jewish people to hear about, or is the dream for others? Right? Is the dream not that way? Right? And I think if you read carefully and we look carefully, this dream is very different, right? This dream is about Nebuchadnezzar. Hashem uses Daniel to tell Nebuchadnezzar what he wants to tell him, but the message isn't about the Jewish people. The message isn't for the Jewish people, it doesn't seem, at least not directly. It seems like the message directly is for the king Nebuchadnezzar. And that's strange, right? Why do we care whether he gets a message or not? Why does he even deserve to get a message, right? That's the question that I want to ask. Anyone have any thoughts? Feel free to open up and comment. Otherwise, I'll just share some stuff that I think. But again, the question is, why is it seems like the pasuk is telling Nebuchadnezzar, or Hashem is telling Nebuchadnezzar what's going to happen, and the whole point is so that Nebuchadnezzar knows. And Daniel just happens to be there. He happens to be the tool, the utensil, but it's not about Daniel knowing things or even about Daniel being successful, as was the case with Yosef. So the question that I have is, why does Hashem want to tell Nebuchadnezzar anything? Who's Nebuchadnezzar? He's an evil, wicked king that destroyed hundreds, if not thousands, if not more people, and and comes in to destroy the Beit HaMikdash. Why do we care that? Why would Hashem tell him anything, and why would we care that Hashem would tell him anything? So that's my question, and my answer actually is going to come back from the Tanakh, but from somewhere else. And what I'm going to read for you now is from the book of Yirmiyahu. This is chapter 27 of Yirmiyahu. I'm not sure if you can see it on your screens or not, but I'm gonna read it. And this is happening kind of at the same time. The difference being that Yirmiyahu, the Navi, is speaking in Israel, whereas Daniel is in Babylonia, right? Daniel was already, if we remember from the beginning, our context discussion, Daniel was shipped out to Babylonia. He's with Nebuchadnezzar in Babel, whereas Yirmiyahu is in Jerusalem as the kingdom is about to be destroyed. So it says as follows. At around the same time, we know this is the same king that we saw that Daniel was around. It says Hashem spoke to Yirmiyahu, and this is what he said. Ko amar Adonai Elai, aseh lecha moserot umotot umtatam al tzavarecha. He says, so says Hashem, you should make for yourself chains and a yoke and put it on your neck. And this actually, we see that Yirmiyahu, in order to create a symbol for the people, actually walked around in the streets with a yoke that you put on an animal. He put one on his neck. V'shilachtam el melech Edom, ve'el melech Moab, ve'el melech Bnei Ammon, ve'el melech Sor, ve'el melech Sidon, b'yad malachim avim Yerushalayim, el tzidkiyahu melech Yehuda. And you should send a yoke, a physical yoke, to all the great kings of the time, the king of Edom, the king of Moab, the king of Ammon, the king of Sor, the king of Sidon, and Tzidkiyahu, the king of Yehuda. Right? So all the different kings, including the Jewish kings, you should send them a yoke. And what should you tell them? It's Tzivita otam el adonehem lemor. And you should tell them saying the following thing. This is what you should know. Anochi asiti et haaretz. Hashem says, he has a message to the people. I created the world. Et adam et behema asher pnei haaretz. I created humans, I created animals, everything that's on the face of the earth. The kochi hagadol, with my great strength. Ubozro'i hanetuya, with my outstretched arm. Untatia la'asher yashar be'enai. And since, says Hashem, I created the earth with my power, with my strength, I could choose to give it to whoever I like. Ata, so now Pasuk 6, he says, Ata, anochi natati et kol ha'aratzot ha'eleh. I say, Hashem, am now deciding to give all these lands biyad Nebuchadnezzar melech Babel, to give them to Nebuchadnezzar melech Babel, Avdi, my servant. And I even am giving him the animals of the land. And all the nations are going to serve him. And his son and his grandson. And then they'll ultimately serve people. But basically, what Yirmiyahu is telling all the kings is, hey, I am giving the power over to Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar is basically like a Napoleon or some other ruler, a powerful ruler that was able to conquer the whole world. And included in his conquest was Israel and destroying the Beit HaMikdash. Now, most people would look at that and say, Nebuchadnezzar defeated Hashem. Most people, if they saw Hashem's Beit HaMikdash destroyed and Israel exiled, would say, hey, Hashem's done, Hashem lost. And here Yirmiyahu and also Daniel are basically saying, hey, the fact that Nebuchadnezzar is victorious, the fact that Nebuchadnezzar is conquering the world, isn't because of his great strength. It's because Hashem anointed him and appointed him to do so. And this is a very, very powerful message, right? The message is that when we see that there's destruction, when we see that someone has power, we tend to think that that power comes from that person or that entity. And what the Nevuah and what the Navi Daniel is telling him, what we see happening, and the fact that a dream is being given over to Nebuchadnezzar, is Hashem is telling Nebuchadnezzar, listen, I made you this way. I gave you this power. And I'm okay with you having this power, but it's not going to last forever, right? And that's really the message of this whole dream, which is when Bnei Israel is in exile, they could think all this is happening because Hashem got defeated. We are weaker. The stronger power, the power of Bavel, succeeded. And what Hashem is saying is, that's not the story. The story is, I made Nebuchadnezzar, and I'm communicating with Nebuchadnezzar. And interestingly enough, actually, even Nebuchadnezzar, when he hears this, accepts. Right? Just going back to Daniel, Pasuk 46 in chapter 2, King Nebuchadnezzar prostrated himself and paid homage to Daniel and ordered that a meal offering and pleasing offerings be made to him. Right, so he takes care of Daniel. He says, truly your God must be the God of gods and Lord of kings and revealer of mysteries to have enabled you to reveal this mystery. Nebuchadnezzar is impressed that Daniel is able to tell his dream, and therefore he has some level of recognition. And in fact, we know that even though Nebuchadnezzar destroys Israel and destroys the Beit HaMikdash, the Jews that he has in his court in Bavel, he treats well. And that he has some degree of respect for Hashem and for the Jewish people and so on. And that seems to come from this dream and Daniel's interpretation of this dream. We're going to see there's more in the book of Daniel that shows that the foreign power that is successful recognizes, at least on some level, that the success comes from Hashem. And that's really the message of this dream, is to say to the powers that be, hey, you're powerful, but that power is transient. It's not going to last forever. It's temporary, and you'll have it, but you'll only have it for a little while. At the end, the real power is the stone that comes in. Now, to go back to the point that we were making before of, so who are these guys? Who is the silver? Who is the silver? Who is the bronze? Who is the iron? Who is the iron mixed with pottery, with clay? So the truth is, it's not clear. The Navi doesn't tell us. There are many people who read the book of Daniel and try and interpret, who are we talking about here? And they give all sorts of different answers. Some answers are Babylonia, Persia, Greece, and then Rome. It's a possibility. There are others that see various different versions of the Greek rulers as being part of it. You know, the answer that I like is actually the answer of the Maharal. And the Maharal of Prague says it's not really 4 specific kingdoms that are being discussed here. It's actually just the idea of 4. And what does the idea of 4 represent in the Tanakh? The Arba Ruchot, the 4 different directions, right? And 4 means scattered, right? And one here, one there, one here, one there, right? And what happens at the end? At the end, after there's 4, right? What happens? Comes the one rock, bam, center, and fills up. And the rock is Hashem. And the idea is that for a while, there's going to be control here or here or here or here, different places where there's going to be control. But at the end, there's going to be one bit of control that belongs to Hashem, and that's going to fill up the whole earth. So have we gotten to that yet? We haven't. Right? We haven't gotten to a time where Hashem has completely wiped out all the powers that be, and instead has just Hashem as the power. But it seems like that's ultimately destined to happen. So what's it waiting for? We might say that it's waiting for us to do our part, right? We might be saying that, listen, Hashem's going to do that, but not till we deserve it. And maybe we haven't gotten there yet. But that's not the main part of the Nevuah. The main part of the Nevuah is to tell Nebuchadnezzar, who's at the height of his power, listen, it's great that you have the power, but recognize where it comes from. The power comes from Hashem. Hashem made you who you are, Nebuchadnezzar. You're great. You're the gold head. There's going to be very few kings in history that are going to have the power that you have, but it's not going to last. You're not going to last, and those that come after you who are weaker are not going to last either. And that's a very, very important message for the Jews in exile, which is kind of the theme that we've been talking about with Daniel, which is we tend to look at different powers and we say, wow, those powers are really powerful, right? And if you would have looked at the Roman Empire, you would have said, wow, that's pretty powerful. Or the Spanish Empire, or the British Empire, or Napoleon, or potentially for a short period of time, Nazi Germany, or even today, the United States of America, right? You might look at all these different powers and say, wow, those are really powerful, and it's going to stay that way, right? Those will always be there. But what the prophecy of Daniel is saying is, listen, as great a power as you can see, you know, take the Soviet Union, right, was very powerful. It could disappear, right? And the same is true for the United States of America. It's a very powerful country. it has, and we don't want it to disappear. It's been very good to us. But at the same point in time, right, the prophecy of Daniel says, hey, they all go. The only one that lasts is the kingdom of Hashem. That's the one that really, really is going to last at the end. And this is important for us because we tend to think the world's not going to change. Of course, we know today, we're a little more sensitive to this. In the time of Corona and the 2020 election and all that's going on, I think we have a better sense of the fact that the world is in a great state of upheaval, and that the things that we thought we could count on, maybe we can't count on. Maybe it won't always be there. And I think that's a significant part of the message that Daniel is giving to Nebuchadnezzar, and that's the message lidorot, for generations, is don't be seduced by the fact that you see the gold head of Nebuchadnezzar. Don't think that you see this powerful country and it'll always be there. It won't always be there. And something's going to take its place, and something else is going to take that place. And ultimately, the only thing that's going to last is the kingdom of Hashem. And that should impact the way that we live our lives and the choices that we make. Anyway, that's the dream that Nebuchadnezzar gets. And I think that's the interpretation of it, and that's what we're supposed to take from it. So I'm going to wrap up here today. Any questions, any thoughts, happy to take it. Otherwise, we'll see you next week with a different version of a dream that Nebuchadnezzar has.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Take care, Flora.
Okay, you too. Listen,
Okay.
Rabbi, could I come to Shul Shabbat?
Yes, this week come, Fadal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.